Okay, we are going to skip over the fluff and jump right into it. My client wants a middle part for her lace closure sew-in, so I am going ahead and placing her middle part so her lace closure middle part can live in that same area and there's no braid in the way so that it looks as natural as possible. All the braids underneath the lace closure will be braided back so that it lays as flat and seamless as possible, and you'll see that I section out from eyebrow tail to eyebrow tail, and all of those braids will be going straight back and living underneath her lace closure. Now you can start at whatever section you'd like, but I like to start in the right quadrant of my client's head and work my way up to the left. Now, I am creating an upside down L shape parting so that I can create her braids, which will start from the temple and make its way all the way down to the nape of her neck. Because her hair is shorter in this area, I am using nylon thread to braid. I opt out of Canacolon because a lot of clients have allergies to it and it inflames their scalp, so I use thread, and actually it creates a firmer base and does not lift as easy as braiding hair. I use the method of feeding in the tail of the preceding braid into the next, and I create a flat and firm foundation at the nape. Now, I wasn't able to catch a good angle of me doing it here, but I'm going to insert a video that shows you exactly how I do it. So I start the braid, and as soon as I get to an area where I feel like the other tail can lay flat in between both braids, I pull it into the braid and continue braiding down. I'm going to show you guys one more time from a different angle. And here is another angle so you can see specifically how I pull that tail into the next braid. Now I'm going to keep that video up so you guys can keep watching, but I want you to also see how I'm at the middle of her head now in that middle section, and I'm braiding these braids going straight back. I'm still going to do the feed-in method at the nape of her neck and pull the tail into the next braid, but these braids that are going to live underneath the lace closure are going to go straight back at no angle. So I'm going to finish braiding that middle section straight back, and then I'm going to move over to the left quadrant and braid it exactly as I did with the right quadrant with the upside down L pattern. So here is a part that many miss that is very important. Sewing down those end parts so they lay really flat and provide a sturdy foundation for the wefts to live in. So I am going across the braids from the right side of her head across to the left. And then I'm going to do the same thing and go across from left to right. And that's going to bring all the braids together, lay them down all flat, and create a firm base for us to lay the wefts on. Doing this also eliminates any gaps in between the braids at the nape of the neck. So of course I'm using a Secret HD lace closure from my Prestige Hair Club collection. I love it because it's so film-like and it creates such a natural and seamless finish. Look how well it blends in with her complexion. I like to place the closure in front of their hairlines because we're going to be using adhesive, and we do not want to get the adhesive on the hairline or want the hairline to obstruct the lace melting so effortlessly onto her skin. So as you can see, I've already placed it in front of her hairline, and I'm going to start sewing right where the first braid starts and wrap it around to the back of the middle of the closure. Make sure your stitches are not too far apart and tight so that the closure lays flush and does not buckle. I'm going to stop sewing at the back of the middle of the closure so that I can start on the other side and meet it so that I can make sure that I'm sewing the closure flushed. I find that when you go all the way around and sew, it sometimes makes the closure moves or it starts to buckle, so this is the best way to do it. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Start at the first braid and wrap my way around to meet the other side that I've already sewn, which is the middle of the back of the closure. And as I'm making my way to the back of the closure, I want you to see how it's laying so flat. I've noticed, like I said before, that when I try to sew around from left to right in one full sweep, when I get to that back portion, there's a little pocket or the lace is lifting and now it's not laying flat anymore. But when you do it this way, you do it symmetrically from right to left and then left to right, it just keeps the closure in place, and voila, you don't have to worry about any buckling in that middle area, and you just sew the lace down flat. So now that we have majority of the closure sewn, we're going to head to the lace portion. I like to cut them in threes because it's easier to lay adhesive underneath the lace when you only have to work in sections. So I'm using the Bow Hold Active for my client, and I'm placing it before her hairline. Do you guys see that? In front of her hairline, not on her hairline. And I'm smoothing it down because you want the layers to be very smooth and thin. In between layers, I like to use the blow dryer on a cool setting because that is what makes the adhesive dry down to an invisible color. When the adhesive is invisible, head on to the next layer and do the same thing. Place your adhesive and smooth it down, making sure that the layer is smooth and thin. Now this is the third layer, and I will say that this has to be the minimum amount for your client to get a good wear. I find that anything less than that, they don't get longer than a week. With 3 layers or more, they could at least stretch it to 2 weeks. See, I went back in and added another layer. I don't play because, yes, lace closures, you cannot promise the longevity, but you can try your best to make sure that your client is going to get good wear out of it, especially for the money that people pay for lace closures. So now it's time to melt that lace into the skin, and yes, Remember before when I said the placement of the closure in front of her hairline is important? It's because the lace melts to the skin. So if there's any hair in the way, it's not going to melt. So I've laid down that middle portion where I placed the adhesive, and now I'm doing the right section, and I'm going to go over and finish her left section. I'm doing the same method as before, applying my adhesive, using the cool setting on the dryer, and then applying another layer until I am satisfied with the amount of layers that I have and the adhesive is tacky and ready for the lace to melt into. Finishing up my last section is the ones I did before. So now I am putting the net on my client's head. I like to sew my wefts onto a net. It just gives you more surface area for you to sew, and it also allows for the braids to lay down more flat and just more longevity for the whole sewing. Oh my gosh, I forgot to mention something very important. Make sure your client is holding the lace while you're doing this. You can rewind back and notice where you start to see her hold, because that's very important. Whichever area that you are adding the adhesive, on the other side, you want to make sure she's holding the lace so that it doesn't move. So I know y'all thought I probably forgot about that little section that I left hanging forward when I placed the closure down. So now we're going to go back in and we're doing my spiderweb method, and we are going to now attach that to the cornrow so that the lace closure can stay in place. Now, a lot of people use the elastic band method and they'll place the elastic band and sew it there, but I created the Spider-Man method, blah, 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 blah. Can't speak. I didn't create it. I learned this spider method from a great hairstylist let's say maybe 10 years ago, and she showed it to me. And when I say game changer, I've never had to use an elastic band and my client's closures stay in place. So just go in and watch, pay close attention to how I do this Spider-Man. I keep calling it the Spider-Man method, but the spider web method, so you guys can see how I am reinforcing it to the braid. Okay, so this is a better angle for me to explain. So I am taking the closure and I'm creating a spider web to reinforce it to the braid so that area doesn't buckle and move. When you're doing this portion, you never want to let go of the thread. As you can see, I have two hands on the thread, one sewing and one holding, and I never let go. That's to create tension so that spider web lays flat every single stitch that I do. I'm going back and forth until I get to the end, close enough to the lace closure, and then I'm going to go back to reinforce those stitches back to the front of the lace. Continue watching. And now it's time to remove the lace. So I'm cutting the lace with one of my old shears that are kind of dull, so I don't use it for hair anymore. I just use it to cut lace, and I'm cutting in a zigzag motion. Some people like to use pinking shears that are already zigzag. That's fine as well. I'm just using what I got. So I'm just making sure that I reinforce the lace. I didn't cut all the thread off, so I just don't want anything to unravel. So I'm just making sure I cut at the exact place that I need to. Okay, y'all, I'm gonna get better at this content creation thing for y'all if I'm gonna be doing YouTube videos. I'm covering up the view, but I'm just continuing to cut in a zigzag motion so I can take all the lace off so that I can melt her down. You can see from this section that I'm still cutting in that zigzag motion. Now I'm going in with the rat tail comb to add adhesive to any of the areas that have lifted, just because I didn't get any glue there when I was first putting the adhesive down. You know, when you cut the lace off, sometimes you have to make sure that you go back and adhere any of the lace that's not down, and I like to use a rat tail comb to do that. And let's talk about cutting the lace. When you're cutting the lace, not only do you cut in a zigzag motion, but be sure to keep just a bit of lace in front of that hairline, because the lace is what melts to the skin, not the hairline. Say it with me, guys. The lace. Leave a little bit of space between the hair and however much lace you're cutting. Just leave a little bit of lace in front of the hairline, because it's going to look very like a line of demarcation. It's going to be very abrupt. It's going to look like it's her forehead, then all of a sudden the hairline starts. So I'm placing her designer melt belt on so that she can melt while I sew the wefts on. And yes, I keep the melt belt on the entire time I'm sewing so that it could be an amazing seamless melt and I could just do my thing. So another part of my technique is making sure that I make that weft start at the tip top corner of that lace, because this is also what acts as an elastic band. You know how you guys sew, or you see how they sew the elastic band and they draw it around to the other side to create some tension to pull? Well, I use a weft so we don't have to use an elastic band. And because I placed that spider web method there, I can sew to the spider web and then bring it to the braid, and I don't have to worry about nothing being there that the thread can't adhere to, and the thread buckling and all that. See there, you just gotta play around till you figure it out. So I like to sew all of the wefts around the closure in a U shape up until I get into that last weft, and I sew it flush right around the lace closure. Continue watching. And there you have it, a nice seamless flushed lace closure, giving wet lace, looking so natural. And we didn't have to use an elastic band. We just went ahead with the spiderweb method and also used the weft to create tension like an elastic band. And just look at it, it came out amazingly. If you guys want me to drop a video that shows more detail about sewing, let me know in the comments.